Hail them.
Hailing frequencies open, sir.
Hailing frequencies. Open.
I don't know why I keep giving alien street food a chance. It's always such a gamble.
Captain, we're being hailed.
On screen.
Hello, and welcome to another Hailing Frequencies Open podcast where we continue to trek through the past and future of Star Trek. As always, I am your host, Mike Jones, and joining me here in the Zoom studio today, he learned that her work meetings are better than his and is jealous and that he's never invited. It's Damien.
Yes, I learned. Wow, I wrote her a nice intro today. Wow, why did I do that? Yes, I'm super jealous. I'm super jealous of her cool meetings. But really, honestly, I'm just excited about our guest because I promise you that I definitely bought the Star Trek: The Next Generation companion when it first came out in 1990.
Absolutely. Well, you've already heard us refer to her. Unlike Damien and I, she discovered Trek as a grown-ass queer woman. She is not afraid to tell the lifers when we're being psycho. It's Lenita.
Psycho? I don't know if I would use the word psycho. I would say, a little extra zealous about things. Like, can we let that go? But I understand your formative years. It made a deep little wrinkle in your brain.
It's true.
It was nice in my intro today. What? You don't need to be invited. It's fine. I'll tell you all about it.
Well, fan is short for fanatic, so I think that we represent that pretty well. And without any further ado, I'd like to introduce this week's guest in the same way that he was introduced to me some 30-something years ago when I flipped to the last page of the Star Trek: The Next Generation companion. So I'm quoting, Larry Nemecek is a former reporter and now entertainment editor of the Norman Transcript, a daily newspaper in Oklahoma University town, an area where he was sooner born and sooner bred. That bio is from 1992, but you may know him from his podcast, The Trek Files, or from Portal 47, or maybe you just know him as Dr. Trek. But you can call him a Trekophile. You'd better spell it with an F. I'm happy to welcome Larry Nemecek.
Oh, Mike, that's awesome. Thank you, guys. I was just thinking, I don't think the transcript has an entertainment editor anymore. It's like gone the way of a lot of print things. But that was said. Yes, yeah. It was so much fun when I was writing the companion on a shoestring, like madly. I had 3 months to do it, and then I got 6 because Leonard Nimoy was in a fight with licensing because they let the post serials Barney wears pointed ears go through and didn't protest it.
I remember that commercial.
You remember that? That made Leonard mad, and he refused to do his image approvals for like 3 months. And what that meant was I got 3 more months to work on. It doubled me for I got to work on the first edition of the companion. So it was a very early lesson. And even when you're doing books about Hollywood, it's still the pictures that matter. Because we held up to get his approval because the biggest thing of the first 5 years was Spock being on Next Generation.
Unification.
Yeah. And that was enough to hold up publication for 3 months, and it gave me 3 more months to madly keep writing, which that's a whole saga, but there you go.
Well, I have to tell you that just last month, so I still have my original copy of the Star Trek: Next Generation companion, which was which was published before Next Generation ended. And it was only last
5
month.
seasons, yes.
Yeah.
5.
And that my sister and brother-in-law gifted me the updated version finally.
Oh, that's lovely.
Spoilers.
Yeah. He joins the card game. The end.
I was gonna say it was really a lot of fun because the time I ran out to LA and I didn't know how I learned so much by not having. I say this all the time. No one rolled out a red carpet for me, really. No one opened the gates and said, here's the official author of the first Next Generation history from the... Nobody did. I mean, it kind of happened, but nobody knew or cared. And all the different arms, there was media relations to deal with through licensing, and then they had to deal with production, and they were barreling down at the end of their season. And I was not there at the good time for anybody to have any time for me. But I had 3 or 4 hours at Bob Justman's house, which was because he was retired, which was awesome.
Wow.
And a huge help. And he saved my ass because I wouldn't have had anything for the beginning of the book because no one who worked on the first 2 seasons of Next Generation was either still alive or wanted to talk about it because they were all pissed. So it was, but you find all that. And I eventually learned, like, go when everybody has done each department's telescoping deadline schedule. It's the writers first and then it's visual effects last, post. Go when they have done their last deadline and they're hanging on for their last week until they can take their break. And that is when everybody will talk to you. But also, you have to earn everybody's trust. It's like, okay, fine. Oh, it's some guy writing a book. Okay, fine. Especially back then, because we weren't drenched in everything 24. Anyway, I will never forget the days when I was back home. So I didn't get to do any interviewing, really, in my 1 week I had in LA. And I knew that this could not be a crapola book with with Star Trek plastered on it. It had to be something really good. I had visions of making a Star Trek in my head. And, Stephen Whitfield Poe. And it's like, I can't be one of those books that people go, yeah, they just reworked this and slapped Star Trek on it. It's some guy. And I was some guy out of Oklahoma, of all places. Like, who knew me and who cared? And I knew it had to be good or else I would be the crap that either people didn't buy or they stuck it in the back of their shelf. So I did a lot. So eventually Rick Berman, Jerry Taylor, Michael Piller, and a very young, just got finished with his internship, Brandon Braga, all did call me, and I had to do interviews the old school news way, which was on a yellow pad with no recording, no tape going. But I was at work when they would call, and my city editor was a huge fan, and I remember, and I was an editor by then, sitting at the editor's desk. There were 4 desks put together, and you never had any warning, right? Nobody made any appointments. So you would get something out of the blue, and hopefully you weren't on a deadline or something. Right? But I remember a couple of times when, and most of the room would not know this, but she knew. You hear a ding, ding, and they're transferring the call, and it would go to our newsroom phones would go to her line, and she would pick up, and she would look at me and go, Larry, Rick Berman is for you on line 2.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And she had this look in her eye like, and a couple of other people in the room would go. I mean, everybody knew I was working on it.
Yeah.
But it was still something to go, oh.
So let me ask you, in getting ready for this, you have a biography on Memory Alpha that is
it's way too overblown. The anal Germans went a little bonkers.
I'm aware of your work. I've listened to your podcast. I've read your books, and
cool.
But there's more there than I realized and knew, and
they overshare on Memory Alpha. I didn't,
sure.
They find a crumb everywhere and stick it in there. Yeah.
But let me ask you, was it the companion that really, in terms of like the Trek fan world, is that what put you on the map to begin with, or?
Yeah, that was what got me to LA and got more immersed. And yes, yeah. I mean, I'd been a fan and worked increasingly in organized fandom, and somewhere after a few years out of school, undergrad and grad school, and then gotten burned. Different things happened along the way. I got burned by Star Trek once or twice and had my hopes dashed. Working on a project with Jeff Mendel that got usurped, and then the karma waves came back around, and we wound up meeting and working together, and Stellar Cartography came out of that, which was wild. But like years later, it's kind of crazy. But I was already feeling like I was banging my head on the ceiling back home, and had just gotten married, and my wife was feeling the same way, and she was mad because her aunts and uncles that went out to work in the war effort during World War II all came back home, and she wanted to be in California and wished she hadn't grown up in small town Oklahoma. And so we had this talk after a couple of years when this opportunity came, and I went out. It was just maddening because they were having a drought and a recession in California, and everybody out here was apologizing for it. And I'm like, guys, your droughts and recessions are like Oklahoma on a boom. As far as opportunities go.
Yeah.
And so after a couple of years and the first edition came out, and we knew there would be more. And when kind of the way became clear, okay, well, now we're going to do 7 years and wrap it up and then do a movie. And then, meanwhile, here's DS9 going along, and here's Voyager. And there was that mid-90s Trek boom. And I was going, well, I've done this, and the first one sold huge.
Mhm.
It kind of blew the doors off. And Pocket was
Yeah.
very cautious. They underprinted Mike and Rick's tech manual, and they underprinted mine. They would do like 5,000 copies at a time, and they would sell out. And they would do another
wow.
5,000. They would
Yeah.
sell out. And after doing that 8 or 10 times, and it didn't go away because they had not done anything for 5 years, and the show was peaking.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
here's
Yeah.
DS9 and Voyager coming down. Anyway, so I thought, well, surely there's got to be more here, and I'll do other things too. And those first few years, Star Trek just consumed me. I mean, I was not just books, because I didn't do another book after this. And some other things were going to go that way, and then things changed. But thankfully, there was another other happening. I wound up being I now, like Dayton, my friend Dayton, has the title of, he's been a consultant to licensees and things. But back then there was no title and there was no sidebar money. But I was doing that for a lot of licensees and helping out the archivist, the little young thing that was working in archives that didn't know Star Trek, and I was kind of helping them pull images and things. But things like the experience in Vegas, got to be a consultant on that, and some of the world
Yeah.
tours and science tours and all kinds of things. And then one time Dan Madsen said, would you be a guest editor? He was having to pull back from doing both Star Wars and Star Trek's magazines and fan clubs, and he wanted me to edit. I guest edited, and then a couple of months later he said, well, can you just do it? You're there in LA. Can you just do it? You're there at the lot. You can.
Mhm.
And that
Also-
happened. And Fact Files happened, which the Americans didn't see, but it turned into that thick, they call it the Architectural Digest of Star Trek magazine.
Mm.
Anyway, because it was thick and expensive, but it also
Mhm.
it recycled all the tech stuff they'd spent big bucks on for the rest of the world that America never saw until they saw it as the magazine, and then people lost their minds. But all of those things were happening in those boom years.
Sure.
And the movies were coming out on top of the series, and then '05 happened and everything blew up, and Star Trek blew up, Berman's contract blew up, Viacom divorced. There was no Star Trek on the horizon. And the Decipher game company that bought the fan club all but blew up and stopped publishing a magazine. And everything that I'd known that I came to LA for like 10, 12, 15 years was suddenly gone. It was like, when I say the fallow times, I mean the fallow times. And the old big box world went away and this new digital age was coming, but nobody knew what the hell that was going to look like, and there were no rules. And if you still had a family and had to, earn your rent or your mortgage and pay groceries, you're like, what? Anyway, it was an interesting time. And then StarTrek.com, the new owners went through 2 or 3 generations, and CBS Interactive said, why do we have this website for a show that's dead? And took it away and didn't talk to licensing and marketing about it, because licensing did use it and Interactive ran it. And so for 4 years, StarTrek.com sat with the same front page it had from December 2007 until they got the key. Anyway, it was a crazy, wacky time. And then and that was 5 years before, Discovery and the streaming era hit Star Trek. So
I gotta say that I was today years old when I learned that you worked on the Star Trek Communicator magazine, because it was the highlight of my kid life, I should say, that I had a letter to the editor published in that magazine.
Oh, awesome. Well, when was that?
Well, I'll tell you what, I was really angry that the number of pips changed on O'Brien's uniform. And so I wrote a strongly worded letter to the fan club, and it was printed. So that should date it around, 93 maybe?
Okay, so. Before I came in about 97, 98, so it was for my time. But no, that was a great letter. I was going to say, so you were upset about O'Brien's pips changing and not about Tuvok's and Paris's pips changing.
Correct, because it had not happened yet.
And, well, it wasn't O'Brien. It wasn't just the pips. It was like what they called him.
Totally. Yeah. Like what? Like we weren't paying attention? What? There's details. We pay attention to details here.
And see, this is we talk about when fandom. This one, writing letters in.
I was a small child and I didn't understand what reruns were. So when they said next week on Star Trek: The Next Generation, I was like, excuse me, we saw that last week. What the hell is going on? My mom said you should write a letter.
Do you think we're stupid?
What do you think you're going to pull over on us? We've seen this before.
I've seen this all before.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
No, it's It's great being young and naive, but then we have lots of adults running around who are naive as well. So anyway, that's we're talking about history today and going back and all that, but it is kind of interesting. We've come a long way. Like if you would watch video of, because I didn't, I was in the middle of the country going to a Star Trek convention. When I heard about them, they were always in LA and New York or even Chicago. To me, Chicago was back east because it was a big city and it was on the edge of the country and it was east of me. I didn't think about Illinois and Chicago being when you were a little kid, the big cities were all in the east except for like LA and San Francisco and Seattle, and they were out west. But they were nowhere near you, and that was the main thing. And I didn't think I'd ever see a convention, or a convention would come to me that was big enough to have actual actors in it, much less. I mean, you come from there, and everything as a fan you knew was when I was just looking. I just had Jeff Mandel's scrapbook when he was a kid and was cutting things out of TV Guide. And they would have like a little 2-line blurb in TV Guide or in your local paper. Well, there might be a Star Trek movie. Oh no, it's been canceled. That whole 10 years. Like you were living and dying by. There wasn't even Entertainment Tonight.
The kids don't understand. You said TV Guide. They don't even know what that is. Children, a TV Guide is a booklet that came out weekly that had the schedule in it that tell you what came on TV, what channel and what time, not the guide on your TV. It literally said ABC, CBS, and told you the times. Continue, sir.
And had
had articles about things.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in your little burg, you would hear what was going on in New York or Washington or LA about things. And you heard about the family access rule, or you heard about the violence, oh, everybody got shot in 68. We're going to take violence out of Saturday morning or whatever it was,
Right.
And, but no, I do this all the time on Trek Files. It's like, okay, we're talking about the paper and stamps fandom. We're talking about paper and stamps internet. And like the Well Committee, this is what's hard to get across to people because it's not just Star Trek. We have a whole pop culture nerd revolution. And I don't want to be chauvinist here about Star Trek, but in the original gatekeepers, and I don't think we're talking about what almost didn't happen in Next Gen yet, but the original gatekeeping in fandom was all the old school litcons, or as I say now, the litcon snobs, who didn't work. Nobody thought about sci-fi on TV or movies. If you got something decent, it was a miracle. If you got a Forbidden Planet, or you got a Day the Earth Stood Still or something, or War of the Worlds, that was amazing because the other 98% was crap, right?
Right. B-movies.
Whatever. And TV was even worse. And then you got Twilight Zone, which was cool, but it was not hardcore sci-fi. It was allegories and it was no regular characters. It was something different every week. There's a word for that.
Anthology?
Anthology, yes. Ding, ding.
Mike?
So there's that. And then and here's Lost in Space. And okay, well, if you're 5 or 6, it's not a big deal, or 7, but it's stinky. So science fiction fandom, I'm air quoting here, and the little dinky conventions that happened were like for 200 people or 150 people, and they were happy. And then this thing called Star Trek comes along, and Spock and dilithium and matter antimatter, and all this stuff happens, and it's this like shockwave. And at first you would think, wow, that's going to bring all these people in. And I think the first year or two, because I saw the after crest, the first year or two, people were showing up at the cons that existed. And the reaction was like, oh, this is great. Yes, welcome. We all love Star Trek too. Now that you're here, you really should sit down and like read your classics and read some Asimov and read some Heinlein and read some Verne and read, and everybody's like, no thanks. I just want to best Star Trek. No thanks. I just want to best Star Trek. Because it was the first wave, right? The thing that anybody gets when they had that first experience. And so after a year or two, it was kind of like, guys, really, no one's going to take you seriously unless you now that you're here, you need to no, we're not finished talking about Star Trek. Oh my God, we got to get it back. Blah, blah, blah. And then that finally turned to, look, why don't you, disdain didn't work. So finally it was like, maybe you guys should just go off and start your own convention. And they were like, okay, fine. Thanks. We will. Bye. And that's what happened.
Wow.
And that was the original gatekeeping, but to me, But that was the beginning of, so after a while, there was a whole lit fan snob media cons, right? And it was Star Trek. And then what did Star Trek do? Star Trek let George Lucas get the last of his financing because it had blown up with the syndicated reruns. It had blown up with the first convention. It had blown up with the tech manuals being on the New York Times bestseller list for 12 or 15 weeks. And the dollar sign people were like, oh, maybe this dead little show and these kids we make fun of, maybe there's some life in this yet. And it was a lot more than kids, right? But that's what, and so I say everything, all the Comic Con culture we have today goes back. It's Star Trek, which is ironic because Star Trek went through 15 years of wandering the wilderness there, while everything, the Marvel and the MCU blew up and Star Wars came back and, and Doctor Who seemed like it's always big when Star Trek is down. Everything else blew up while Star Trek was away, and then Star Trek came back, and it was like, now we have a whole generation of people that don't know. Not that it matters on one level, but it's just, let's be honest here. It's like Star Wars onward, it was ripe. Maybe it would have happened another way, and not that it's a contest or anything, or no one's keeping score, but look what sparked this.
Yeah.
Now,
well, let
me ask you before we get into the actual, because
I know, here I go.
We wanted to talk about early TNG history.
Yeah.
But before we do that, and I promise we will, I want to touch real quick on the Trek Files and your podcast and how it came to be that you are the keeper of all this archival material and how you got access to it and what just explain your format and how that came to be, maybe.
Right. Well, this is very simple. I'm not the keeper of the archives because the archives are all at the Roddenberry Entertainment offices. So I think most people know that Gene, like Bob Justman and like other people, donated a lot of their material to some libraries. So Gene's basic original series library is at UCLA, like the really personalized, like notes on paper and that kind of thing. And a lot of documents and memos and things are down at the UCLA library. And apparently, and I've never physically been there, although I met the librarian a few years ago, but archivist. Apparently, in the early days, no one got it, and a lot of material walked away that nobody was paying attention to, or some things walked away until they started clamping down and going, "Oh, we're losing stuff," and they kind of applied a real rigorous, security thing. Not to be hardcore about it, but
no, you need to be hardcore about it.
You can't just say, "Okay, here's the door."
It needs to be in the restricted section, where nothing gets copied, nothing leaves. Hello, gloves in.
And it's sad that the whole no copy thing happens, but at least now we have digital cameras. We can take decent things. In the old days, everybody had to do their notes.
Correct.
But the point was, and what I didn't know. I mean, I'd known. I got to meet Gene once. Before we moved to LA and before the companion happened, I started to say before he died. Well, hopefully, but I knew Majel, and when we moved, and Janet, my wife, was worked on Voyager for 5 years. Lolita Faggio was good enough to say, "Well, you're a competent business person. You're a fan, but you also will keep your mouth shut, and you're a competent business person and an office person with some office degrees." So she got to fill in, and then went on as the assistant script coordinator, which used to be the script typist, but now they do all kinds of duties beyond that, and for Voyager. And then when the person having that went away with Michael, while they were with Michael Piller doing Legend, and then when Legend didn't sell, and Michael kind of came back, Jana didn't come back. She stayed with Michael as assistant, so Janet got to be permanently there in the Hart Building with the writers, and was there for 5 years until she went bonkers. till Brannon was the showrunner and went bonkers. But I went down this anyway. That was a lot of stability for us, and let me kind of get my legs under me and do all this. But because of that, she was an employee, and Majel and Gene used to have the parties like 3 or 4 times a year, and we got invited out to the house. And even before I was doing the magazine, I was still helping the convention I started back in Oklahoma City, ThunderCon, and we had Majel and Raina, her assistant, come out and was a guest, and that was good for facilitating people. But knowing Majel, and then Rod was like the rebellious teenager that had wanted nothing to do with his parents' work until his mother got a little older, and then he went, "Oh, I need to take on the family name here." And when that all transitioned, working with them, but the Trek Files was about probably 10% of what they had is in the library, is at UCLA. They still had tons of memos and letters and stuff. And it was in boxes and cartons. And after his mom died, or toward the end there, they rented an office. They started Roddenberry Entertainment. Lincoln Enterprises transitioned to Roddenberry.com and for a new era. But they still had tons of paper and tons of stuff. And it was in cartons. And somebody went through and kind of tried to file things. And then a few years later, they hired somebody else to go through and file. But it basically came down to, in the teens, when they were looking for a mission, one of the missions they were looking at was, podcasts were starting up. And Rod had already suggested that John Champion and then it was Ken do mission log. And then that was kind of the first one. And then they were going to do a live thing or something. Anyway, the second, and they inherited a couple other ones that came under their umbrella, which have now gone away. But Women at Warp and not something one. Oh, I've gone by Priority One. Those have since ended on their own and gone away. And meanwhile, the Roddenberry home library has gotten bigger. But the Trek Files was the second podcast because Rod said, we have all of these things sitting in these file cabinets. They're not getting to air. They're not in a library where even a few people can see them. We need to air them out. We need to get them out, and we need to do it in a smart way. And he said, I think I want Larry to do it. And this is 2017 and 2016. And John Champion was working with them on Mission Log. And they were talking about how to grow their little network. And, it was a big thing. Everybody had networks. There was the Trek FM network, and the Trek Geeks had their network, and everybody was adding titles. And and they said, we need to do this smartly. What are we going to do? And he said, I want Larry to do it. And I want to pull something, get something every week and get out and have a guest with it. And John's contribution was, I think let's make them just 15, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Don't have the beloved, and I'm saying this, knock wood, on you guys, on me, on my live show every week. Everybody else wants to talk.
Right.
And John's thing was, let's just make them 15, 20 minutes so they're bite-sized for commuting, or, and if you want to listen to 2 or 3, then you can.
Yeah.
But let's have it do that. And also, let's take advantage of guests not wearing out our guests. And then so they came to me and said, Larry, would you want to do this? And I said, hell yes.
Yeah.
And then I said, my thing will be that when we have guests, and I love fandom, but my thing as a kid was reading the magazines and the semi-pro ones, especially like Trek magazine, and then the Best of Trek reprints and all that. And I would read so-and-so's, well, I have many points of many things that I would do my way, but one of them was, I'm all for fans sounding off and talking, but I don't want to read articles about what one fan person says. I want to know, I want the horse's mouth. I want to know, and now we've lost a lot of them along the way, but back in the day, we still had most of them. And I said, I want to hear it from the person. I don't want to hear some fan interpreting something. Interpreting. So that was my thing. I said, if we do this, let's have somebody who is from the Star Trek family, or from the industry, or is actual family to the Star Trek family if they passed, and do it and talking about it. So that was, and we started slow, but that was the roots. And that was I started doing Trekland Tuesdays live in 2017. And the Trek Files was 2018. So we just finished 13 half-year seasons, and we just started the 14th season with the 35th anniversary of Where No Man, the second pilot, and George Takei was we had a call sheet.
Yes.
And so but that's the idea.
I literally just listened to that the other day.
Cool. Well, cool. No, that was great. And then we finished up last season. We did the anniversary, the 35th anniversary of what did I say? The 60th anniversary of Where No Man, and then the 35th anniversary of Mr. Worf Fire, and the Best of Both Worlds Summer that blew up Next Generation.
Yes, and you had Ron Moore on, which was fascinating.
Talking about I said I saw him at Yuri's night.
Thank you for doing 2 parts, because 20 minutes was not going to be enough for me.
I said, come on, Trek Files. He said, yes. I said, what do you have I said, we could do all the routine like what you did, or is there something off the wall? as a fan you'd want to do? And he goes, let's do the Inside Star Trek album from 76 because that was really important to me as a kid.
Yes.
And I said,
Yeah.
okay, awesome.
Weird
Let's
thing
do that.
was.
Right.
Let's do that. And it's still around. People can still get it, right? So
Right,
no,
so
we had a great run of episodes here lately. So yeah, so that's it's either been we find a piece of paper
Battery 15%. Charge your glasses for full functionality.
Mike's glasses need to charge, everybody, to be clear.
Sorry, my glasses were talking
I was
to
like,
me.
do I need to plug in my iPhone up here? What am I doing?
I can't believe that went through.
That was
Sorry.
perfect. I love that.
So the Trek Files started off as let's find a piece of paper and find someone to go with it that's cool. And not just about Trek, like we have Gene's speeches, his guru days, making his college tours. And we have earlier stuff, and now there's a podcast called Genealogy that is doing his earlier shows. But we touched on that some, and especially like the Lieutenant and Have Gun Will Travel that really bore into Star Trek were predecessors.
Lots of connections.
Yeah, so it's either get the paper and find a guest, or we have a guest that's like, I don't know, Lawrence Luckenbill is writing a book, and so he wants to come and talk about his book.
Knows.
Yeah, so Cybot.
Wild.
So we go, well, let's get a Star Trek V thing and talk about Star Trek V, and then you're talk about your book, and that'll be the cherry on top.
All right, so I got one for you. A time that you blew my mind. Okay, the predecessor to Star Trek: The Next Generation that was made by other people, that was maybe or maybe not made entirely to con Gene into agreeing to do Next Generation.
Right.
Can you tell us about that?
I've since seen that somebody else, one of the other gals, peeps that are trying to do this kind of, because look, it's a big field. Everybody, come on. If you want to do this kind of thing, please, we need everybody working on it. There's so much there. But somebody had come out with this about I found out after the fact, because I fell off my chair. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
This is a whole fleshed out format, but it felt very, we did this right after Star Trek 3, which is what happened. It was all consumed with Klingons, and it was all set, because TNG is what Star Trek was a show about Kirk, Spock, and McCoy in their time until Next Generation. Everything was, Star Trek was what it was. And to open up the paradigm and open your brain, mind blown, to go, well, let's do it. They did that because nobody wanted to recast and reboot in the conventional way. No one wanted to see somebody else playing. So, and they were too old to do, I don't mean too old, but you shouldn't wish.
26 episodes a year. They were
yes, and 12 and 14 and 16 hours, 5 days a week, maybe 6. You shouldn't wish that on anybody, much less the creative crews and all of that. So you need younger people to do so that they avoided the whole problem. They said, well, we'll just catapult 80 years. And it had thankfully been 20 years. So there was a little bit of TV production and cultural distance that you didn't worry about going, I say 100 years. It was, 78 years from Star Trek 4 then to from 2286 to 2364. But they kept saying 78 years, and people are going like
78 years. 78 that's years. Really 78 years from where?
What we know Mike was doing when they would use that phrase. What Mike Okuda was doing was like dating from Star Trek 4 to the beginning of Next Generation, because that was where things were at the time. Anyway, that whole thing, because you were forced to go into the future and say, here's our excuse. We're not rebooting them. We're not recasting them. Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, Shatner's face, Nimoy's face, D. Kelly's face, everybody, they're all still in our history books, much less our hearts. For the fictional characters. They did not go anywhere. It's their history. And now they're the next, and the challenge is going to be, well, what's changed in 80 years and 100 years? And where are we, and what's going to differentiate? It's the old Star Trek mantra of, anytime there's a new movie or a new series, it's got to be exactly the same, only totally different.
Yep.
And it's like, we're on that. So the idea that they were forced into having to have new characters 80 years later, so the look, the tech, how will they put the show together? And then eventually, how are they going to get it to you? Because the biggest thing of all was they didn't want to be on the bubble. Now we have a word for that, being on the bubble. But back in the day, the Save Star Trek campaign and all that was maddening. And they're like, look, I think we proved something in 10, 20 years. We didn't not only just have a TV show that came back. Now we've had movies that are the opening box office breaks every time we have a new movie. And they didn't even know about 4 yet. 4 had just happened, and it was huge. So
Huge.
it's like we shouldn't have to put up with this crap. So they went to everybody. All the networks gave them, 4 networks then, even Fox, gave them crappy deals. Well, we'll think about, and they're like, no, we have earned our keep. And it's Gene, and it's so that this whole and we've done Trek Files on this. The whole pioneering syndication thing, where we'll just put our own little network together just for this show, and had willing people all over the country. It was sold big time.
Wow.
So, so, and then it was a little wobbly to start off with. Yeah. And then it got there, and then it blew up, 3rd season. But that all happened because they were kind of forced into doing it. And then it turned out to be and then when it happens, suddenly after a little bit, the old a lot of that hardcore, I'm going to say the fanfic people who were such Spock lovers were like, you're just trying to erase our people. It's like, no, we're not. No, we're not. There was so much. They laugh about how the worst enemy of any new Star Trek is old Star Trek fans.
Which is still very true.
It's very
some things never change.
We know those people.
And then it takes a while for the new generation to find itself and finally outgrow the last generation, hopefully lovingly. But but anyway, that it took a while for all that to come together and them to find their footing and the new audience to find itself, and it all blew up with, with the best of both worlds summer. It all just kind of coalesced and went woo. And it was
now in all of your sort of research on all of this, who do you feel like was the real brain trust in the embryonic stage, like what we ultimately knew as like
TNG?
The show? Yeah. Okay.
Well, I said real quick. So that first version, I think they knew that, and Gene had just done a new deal, but I think they were hoping he would just take his whatever 20% of the show or something and go home and sit and enjoy it. And
now, do you think they were actually trying to make that show, or do you think they were trying to use those?
No, they spent time on it. They're one of the people involved with it. I tried to get them to talk, who I'd never talked to before, who wrote a couple of the first season stories on the TNG that eventually happened.
Oh.
And I said, let's talk about this. I said, I'd love to talk to you about how this was made, and he's like, no, I've been screwed by Paramount once. I don't want to talk again. Still.
Wow.
And so, no, I think it was deadly serious. They put a lot of time and sweat, and we had you see it. It was a whole show, but it was very much, it was set in that immediate era, right? It was all Klingons and Federation and then a few other alien, but that was the big tension. And it was still, and it was still 86, and we were still in the Cold War with Russia. So on one level, it was still kind of there, but Gene's point, and he was, it was like, this, we have to get beyond this. Oh, what's going to happen between the Federation and Klingons? Ooh, here's a whole new story paradigm. We're going to put Federation people on Klingon ships and a Klingon representative on a Federation ship. What a detente kind of thing to do. Like, it's like, well, that's a start. Like, we need to do that times 100 to have a new show.
Yeah. What else happens?
And they were still writing, the descriptions of the women, were still horrible. Being complimentary, but still,
quote unquote complimentary.
Yeah, quote unquote complimentary on their appearance.
Well, there was one in the original.
She was screamingly beautiful.
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah, kind of.
Well, and how many boobs does Troy have? I mean, question is a deep and
He's trying to make her alien. Well, now on one hand, that's famous, and on another hand, Dorothy Fontana shot that down real fast. And it was like the first 5 seconds of thinking was where that was, and it was shot down within another 5 seconds.
Yeah, it never died.
It never, but people love to talk about it. Yeah, everybody loves to talk about it, but it wasn't like, oh, that got to the last Bible and they were about to start casting people. No. So yeah, he did. So they sent him. It's almost like, well, we've been working real hard on this, Gene. Hope we get your blessing. And he basically was like, no. He's like, no. I think, and I don't think they were even trying to like sneak something by him. I think they just thought, look, he's not in the best shape. The last thing he's going to do is come back and slave away, even if he has a staff. He's not physically, and Bob Justman told me that too. Gene wanted, he started with his original, some of the oldsters, Dorothy and David Gerald and Bob Justman producing, and Eddie Milkus, even, who, after he was the post production guy on Star Trek, wound up doing Laverne and Shirley and Happy Days, and he
Wow.
was sitting pretty. He didn't need to come back, but he was almost at retirement, and he came back as a favor to Gene, and they worked on the pilot for a few months, and then he went ahead and retired, and that's when Rick Berman, who had been the studio guy assigned, watch over that Roddenberry guy. He's kind of crazy and wild and unpredictable and cranky, and he's getting older. And that's when Eddie Milkus bowed out before they got too much further along. They invited Rick in
Which
to
seems
be
like
on
a
the staff,
seems
not
like
just
a
to be
very
Superman.
unlikely character to have found himself in that spot, taken from the studio world. Like, how did Rick Berman get picked up into all of this?
He happened to be sitting at the studio. It was almost like a punishment. I mean, I think a lot of the people at Paramount, because remember, they're hatching a whole new business idea. We're going to have syndicated stations. Now, this new Star Trek's got to hold up, and they were hedging their bets. If you remember, one year, and they're looking at Paramount properties, and one year they made a series out of, maybe it was the first year. I got to go back and see, because it was just one at a time. They were going to sell a package to these stations. So it wasn't just selling Next Gen, it was selling Next Gen. And at one point, they were going to bring back War of the Worlds, and then they changed the format totally halfway through. Jared Martin was the star in it. They owned War of the Worlds, the movies, so they made a running show out of it, which was okay, but it didn't blow up, and then they watered it down the second year, as they do. And then there was the Untouchables. They did a year of a new Untouchables.
Yeah.
So they had like two shows to pitch, so they could run them as a back-to-back. It's 6 o'clock and 7 o'clock. If you're an independent station, but a lot of network stations, wound up running it and then realized they got better ratings with the Star Trek than they did with whatever if it was a crappy slot or weak, something really weak, they would run that instead of the weak network show and be happy. So anyway, but that was it was a whole new gamble to do this. So it was, on one hand, it was the business side running around trying to sell the show to the stations, and then the old fashioned problem of how do we make a decent show and crank it up. And then Gene's old guard that he brought in kind of were bumping heads a little bit with the new guard. And anyway, that's what you get, hints of that in the companion that we could talk about in 90, or people would talk about. And then as these years have gone by, everybody's diving into this stuff and people are talking. And that's one of the great things about Trek Files. And not that I have ever gone after, like now we'd say clickbait. The old days it would be like, scandal sheets and yellow journalism and National Enquirer type crap. But just to stir the shit, oh, can I say that?
Oh, you can always
Absolutely.
say shit. It's totally
Okay. Just to stir the shit is to stir the shit. So, but it's when you're not blowing it up just to be sensational, because Gene's attorney Leonard Majlish was this. He in saying he was defending his client, especially for all the years he got demoted as king of the movies, right after motion picture.
Yeah,
they didn't want that to ever happen again. So he does this deal that's insane and is such a good deal for Gene, like in 76 or 7, no, not, I'm sorry, 87 or so, like 86, on the eve of when they need Gene to come back and bless the new series, and he's going to do more than bless it. He's going to jump right in the middle of it and do it, because he could. He had the leverage. He didn't have a contract then. He got a contract, but he had the leverage. If he went out and said, "Oh, this new show is shit. Don't watch it, kids."
Don't watch it.
Then he played with that with Spock dying in Star Trek 2, even right.
He leaked that.
Yeah.
Right.
So
It's
anyway,
interesting
it was weird that so he got his cushy contract under threat of not supporting it, but then not only did he sign off on that, he and he also forced him to finally open up their crooked account. That's a funny story. That there's a whole thing that somebody tells somewhere, but basically he was playing golf and somebody from the studio was there and they were like, "Gene, we're so glad you're making Star Trek again." And he was kind of like, "Yeah, we're finally going to open up the books, all these years of all these syndicated reruns and how you haven't been paying us." And they're like, "What?" And Leonard Majlish had tricked them in the contract wording to where it wasn't just look at the books for. Anyway, he did something where it was like, "No, we mean all the books for all the years of all the reruns of all the and a ton of people, and they wound up having to write him a big check, and they wrote Nimoy a big check to
Sure.
settle, and a bunch of stuff before he would come back and do those last movies at the same time. And anyway, he got the better of them, but then it turned into this the chaos on the bridge chaos.
Oh,
Because
yes,
his
we're-
attorney was
right.
Leonard Majlish was like got his hands and fingers into everything and was looking out for his client, but at the same time it was basically a case of if there was chaos everywhere, then Gene would never, and Gene's health was starting to decline and cognitive
Right.
too, and he within a year he was having his little mini strokes that nobody knew at first what they were. But in protecting him, the best way to protect him was to think that they were, and they knew they had to make a show or else there'd be no money. But it was
Right.
like make everything as crazy as, at least in the writer's room. Now the production side that like Rick eventually I mean, they had to, they eventually had the well-oiled machine, but they still went through people. They didn't have Marvin Rush as the DP until third season, and they went through different directors. In fact, that was a shakedown time. And Bob Justman was old, but went ahead and retired finally halfway through the first season, and then he stepped totally away after the first. And he was always beloved, but he helped get it launched. And there's a reason the first season looks kind of, people say it looks kind of TOS-y.
Yeah.
That's kind of,
flat.
they were coming from where they were and Bob was, Bob still thought they would have the Cyclorama planet set, and that would be good, where they, anyway, it was crazy the first couple of years. And then it's like when Gene's health went down and he was there less, and Michael Piller came in third season, and it was insane because of the chaos. But by the end of the year, they had things settle down, and then that's again, Best of Both Worlds blew up and it came up. But yeah, that was all that stuff with that first draft was all very intentional, and that they wasn't like, let's be really bad and make Gene come back. They were like, here's what we're gonna do. We're ready to go. What do you think? And he was like, they didn't expect him to rip it up and say, oh no, and I'm exercising my new contract to say I'm going to come back and line produce it. And they're like, oh
my gosh.
Oh, okay. And they couldn't, and they did.
It must have been like a pressure cooker, because not only with the syndication model that they were creating, not only are you selling it to like some advertisers, you're selling it to like all of these stations across the country. So talk about, it has to be marketable. Even in creating the characters, you have to think about what's going to sell, both in the South and out West. And, it's interesting to me how the characters evolved through those early drafts, from Macha Hernandez and Leslie Crusher and, those early versions of the characters. But I know that there were creative reasons things were changed, but I wonder if there were money reasons things were changed. You know what I mean? Like,
well,
I feel like
I don't know. I mean, there's all kinds of like, it was still eye-opening to me. At the time I sat down to write this at the end of 5 years edition, and I knew in my head it had to be a high enough bar. Like I went to bed at night with visions of the making of Star Trek dancing in my head. I mean, that was, to me, that was the bar you had to be at.
Yeah.
And
those are the holy scriptures.
We had 3 months to do this. I got the word in like February, and I was supposed to turn it in, I don't know, by April or June or something. And somehow I got until August or September. I have to go back and look at the early stuff. But fortunately, I was a fan, and I had all my star logs, and I had fanzines, and anything that was about background. There was a lot out there, but there was some of the real common places like David Gerald and Susan Sackett's column in Starlog, but also other places and other things. And I had just gotten out of, what was I? This was 80s. So I was like 2 years out of grad school, and I was still very much flush with endnotes and, da-da-da. And I was totally not going to be a rip-off person and rip people off. So I wanted to cite, scripture and verse. And to his credit, what's his name in the compendium? Alan Asherman had done that, the first edition of his compendium, which kind of, as the editions went by, kind of got laundered out a little bit. But he started out the same way.
As Mike Jones holds up the book.
As I bring up the props.
Yes, this compendium, is this what you're speaking of?
Yeah.
When I was a kid,
although I'm talking about the original blue one without a photo on the front from Motion. Yeah. Now it's my is this Oh yeah. Okay, bear with me. Wait, are we
I
doing
love the
any video at all? There.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Oh,
There we
there it
yes.
go.
is. Wow.
And there it is. Not as torn up as my Bejo's concordance, but anyway, I was going to cite everything, and I did, thank God, but it was still going to be thin, and nobody had time to talk. Like I said, nobody had time to talk to me. And I, those 4 hours I spent with Bob at his house, and we talked, and then he says, and he had that big mustache, and he goes, "Well, would you like to see some of the memos I wrote from then?" And I'm like, "Yes." I didn't say that.
Yes.
I said, "What?" So he went in and he's looking on his screen and he was just like going down, going, and this is like a 92 PC or whatever. And he's like, okay. And I'd had my Mac for a while, my Plus for a while. And he'd say, okay, well, this is where I'm suggesting, this is where we're talking about the Noah's Ark with the kids. I'm like, yes, please. And he's print that one out. And I'm, oh my God, you want this list of all the titles we went through to come up? And we finally
Yes.
just went with, yes, please.
Mhm.
Okay, do you want the slightly obscene list that we came up? Yes, please. Okay.
Anything
Well, and
you
I
want
love
to
the
give me,
idea,
give it
like
to me.
we look at, like, for instance, like the invention of this sort of next generation structure that we have, where the captain stays on the bridge and the first officer is on the planet, and we have these like dual ship planet stories happening together. That is sort of the format that we're accustomed to. That there's a whole trail of breadcrumbs leading to like how and why that
Yeah.
came to be.
And it starts with any fan reading David Gerrold's critique. He did Stephen Poe did his making of, which was like the Bible, and there was nothing else for ages. And then David kind of went his own way and did his making of Tribble's book. Okay, that's a natural, still very insightful, tons in there about Gene Coon, all of that, and what it was like just hanging around the sets and watching, everybody's attitudes and vibe in the day, and also how a script, how you go first. Here's your story. Here's pitching. Here's the first draft. Here's the script. Here's how it's rewritten. And then he did, instead of the making of Star Trek, he had that World of Star Trek book, and that was more like, here's the 70s, here's fandom, here's what the actors and everybody with the show is doing now, dealing with being these icons who still sometimes have to pay their mortgage somehow, you know, and kind of updated things and got it down. And his critique, he's like, look, guys, we love the show, but if we ever get the chance to do it again, here's what has to change.
Yeah.
And he had those critiques. And one of them was, we all said in the 70s, it really is, we love the show, but it really is stupid for the captain to go down into danger every week.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he had 3 or 4 of those. And so when they sat down, they got their chance. When somebody handed them the keys again, they said, okay, we love the first show, but here's what we're gonna make Stardates make sense in a way. We're going to tie things
They
down
make
at
sense.
the beginning.
How do they make sense? I still don't understand Stardate. That is the one thing. Like, I understand stuff, but Stardates, zero.
Okay.
Maybe I need to read the background.
This will make
of
you
it.
feel better, Linda.
Okay.
So the original series don't make any sense. They kind of start here and they kind of lurch along until they don't. And then the animated series kind of picked up on that and kind of went along. And then the movies all would just go a little further along. They do. The original, but Next Gen, they sat down somewhere between David and Mike Okuda. They all said, okay. They started very arbitrary. This is so funny. So it's the 24th century. So we're going to go to a 5. Remember, a lot of this was about how are we different from the original series? Still the same, but different. Well, it's 100 years later. So now we have 5 digits in the stardate, not 4. Okay,
Right.
whatever.
Okay.
And we're going to start it with a 4 because it's the 24th century. Well, okay. And then the next digit is what season it is. So all the first season star dates are 4-1, blah, blah, blah. And then they go from 000 to 999 over the course of the season.
You're actually
And then
breaking
when we
my
come
brain
back
here
for
with this.
second, say what?
You're actually breaking my brain
My
here
brain.
with this.
See,
And
that's
then
why I
season-
asked the questions.
So season 2 starts with 42 XXX 000 and goes to 42999. So what finally somebody realized was like, oh, so what we're saying basically is a year is 1,000 star dates. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah. So you had 3, so Terran, Sol 3 calendar year is 365 days in a year or 366 in a leap year. So 366 is to 1,000. So you'd set up a ratio. So by late TNG or early Voyager, Mike Okuda was doing a memo for and then writers would mess this up, and they would kind of talk about, well, like, really, when you're writing your script, don't worry, we'll help you with this, but you can progress a start date. They would say things like, half a star date is a day, or a day goes along, tenths of a star date is hours, which makes no metric sense or whatever.
So that's the point.
Yeah.
So that's the point.
Kind of, but basically, what people came and what Mike finally did was he basically took the 1,000 metric to the 365 and said, okay, on January 1st, your start date is 000. And it can be 001 and 002. And then on January 2nd, so you don't have to set your episode to a calendar day from Earth. But if you want to set out 26 episodes across 1,000 star dates, here's kind of what we suggest. And that's what he did. It wasn't so much, I take that back. It wasn't so much about the calendar dates. It was like, so your episode 1 you could put your date in between 000 and what's 1,000 divided by 26?
We don't do math on this show.
I know, obviously, because I'm going to go right on. I fit right in. But that was the idea. So Mike would do a memo at the beginning of every year and say, okay, so if you're working on here's the 26 slots, so your star dates could fall in between here. And if it was a voiceover, if they had to swap places, sometimes they wouldn't fix the star date and it drove people crazy. Yeah. Or people said, okay, this technically happens before that. Or if it was only in voiceover and they'd made the decision, they could just, if it was just a captain's log and that's the only time it mattered. The time when it would matter is if they tried to put a star date like in an Okuda in a graphic and it had been shot, and you actually could see it, So that was one thing. But that's tying down exactly what and we talked about this in the Trek Files, finding those memos and things. And Mike came in as a graphic person, but wound up, thank God, being the subversive order of all the things that nobody in the big offices wanted to deal with, and wound up giving all this canon that now all the fanboys and girls who grew up to be writers or designers all take that and run with it. Like the ship names and classes and orders and the groupings of numbers and the rooms on the decks and what's on it. He and Rick and Andy Probert at the beginning, Rick Sternbach, they all worked out the general layout of the ship, but they were doing all this ahead of time. And see, none of that had happened with the original series. There was some, they knew the bridge was on top and they knew sickbay was in the saucer. And we still fight about where engineering at the back of the hull, primary hull, or was it down in the hull below? And it's been retconned down below now to make more sense. But they were going to say, let's learn from the original series on characters. Let's learn from the original series on just everything about the show. And then we don't have to hit people over the head with it, our writers and our designers, but we have it ready. So it's here if you want to use it. We're not making it up on the fly. And there'll still be stuff we make up on the fly, but we'll have more of it under control at the beginning. And that was part of the revolution in just the universe of things. And in the tech, and coming up with we're going to come up and talk about what the parts of the warping, what are the parts of it, what's a nadion pulse and a phaser. I mean, we're going to talk about all this stuff and how many settings are and what they do and how destructive each one is from 1 to 16. And all this stuff is going to be there. So it's ready for you if you want it. And we're not come back a year later and screw something up because we didn't have and that's the big revolution of Next Generation. And, it didn't come all at the beginning, but it got there. And then what you were talking about, I was lucky enough as a fan to have come across the casting, the audition sheet they sent out. Now they hide these things. But back in the day, if you were in an office and you saw the facts come through and they send this to 100 casting agencies, and out of those 100, how many had a Star Trek fan in the office?
Yeah.
Right.
So at least 5 or 6. So one of them gets it, they leak it, or they sit on it so they don't get fired by whoever if it got back to them. And they wait 9 months and then they put it out, like smartly. But thankfully, I had that, and we could run with that. And you see Captain Jules Picard, and Riker with a Y, and Macha Hernandez, patterned after Vasquez from Aliens. Yeah.
Right.
And
But now, a question for you. In all of these, we have these, like we have a Macha Hernandez where there was a Tasha Yar and a Leslie Crusher where there's a was, but are there? It's everything that you hear from this. It sounds like this sort of general slots kind of stayed the same in terms of like who the central are there characters who of the main cast who like fell off through the process or got added late? Do we know that?
it's this one was and the relationships. I mean, some of them changed a little bit, but the other revolution that happened was Hill Street Blues was big, had just happened a couple years before, and L.A. Law and and St. Elsewhere, the ensemble shows
Yeah.
were out, and that was a big thing because the original series was, as I like to say, was a lead, a second banana, and a bunch of other people.
Right.
And it's amazing that the actors and the characters came alive as much as they did, so that by the time of the movies, one of the demands, and the fandom had years to percolate, right, was you better not do a movie without everybody. And that was kind of a contractual thing. And you had Rand back. Grace
Right.
Lee was back in the thing.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a thing with Star Trek. So when they sat down to make this one, by the time the movies had run, all the other little people had become just as part of the, you still knew Shatner was the lead and Spock was number two, or they were co-leads. Or was it a triangle with McCoy? And, was McCoy in the bottom five or McCoy in the top three? All that stuff you can get off, and some of it was the way they paid, their contracts or the way they did residuals. But by the time of Next Gen, you'd had this ensemble revolution happen, and they went, well, we got to be relevant. We have to be up with the rest of TV. We can't have lead, second banana, and all the little people. Let's have all, and we have to rep. And so you have, a handicap, you have a disabled person that was the homage to George LaForge. And you've got all that. And we're going to have more women in the cast and, all those kinds of things. But there was that whole thing over all the show. The design, the casting, the format was, it's got to be like the original series, but totally different. And they did not want to have captain, first officer, science officer, and then, medical officer. They didn't want to have every little slot the same. Now you had a captain. But yeah, David's thing about you don't put the, so that was going to be it. And that was a thing. Well, we have a new rule that captains don't beam down until it's been cleared by somebody, like the security chief or something. Somebody's cleared it.
Because that makes sense.
And that's thank you. And we're going to have, so now so they'd say we're going to split the Kirk persona between the captain. So Riker is like young guy Kirk and Hart is older Kirk. I mean, wisdom wise, and we're going to do that. And a lot of people would look at this now and say, well, Kirk was young Gene and daring do airline pilot, fighter bomber cop Gene, and older Gene, TV producer, is Picard watching, But anyway, all the characters. So Data was kind of the new Spock, but they didn't want him to be. They didn't want another Vulcan. They didn't want anything to be exactly the same.
Yeah.
They didn't even want to have a chief medical officer and a chief engineer, and they didn't have a helmsman and a navigator. They had a con and ops.
Yeah.
So they were trying to, partly because they didn't just want to on the surface be compared like apples to apples, but also they were trying to find ways to say, look, a century has passed. Here's the way they do things now.
Yeah, there's new language. There's new positions. There's differences. Yes, this is still a valuable position, but the language has changed. It has evolved.
Right.
Yes.
No communications officer.
But yes, all the standard little, and it felt less like the battleship submarine crew. And that was the other thing. It's been 100 years. They never used this on screen, but Gene taught, one of the memos, somebody said it, and then they just used it underground. Technology unchained. We have the budget to do this. So all the stuff that everybody makes fun of now, the carpet on the walls, much less the carpet on the floor, and the kids on the, the families on the ship. And, we shouldn't have to make Starfleet people like Starfleet in this century, even more so than the last time, because the last time looked a lot like World War II, Vietnam era military in a lot of ways, vibes.
Yeah.
And one of those was they were still under the whole, if you wanted a family, man or woman, you had to pick career or family. Couldn't have them both. And if you tried to do both, one would suffer. Like your family's going to suffer, or maybe your career.
Right.
And they were like, no, you should be able to have it both ways. And then somebody said, well, so they're going to be out there with the dangers and you're going to have your family with you and get killed like Swiss Family, like Space Family Robinson. And that's part of, and they'd wanted the old ship. The movies they tried to do in the 70s, they were going to have the ship separation happen. That had been a thing that had floated around. And they said, okay, now we will build it in. And that's what, if we get into battle, the families take off on the saucer, and the secondary hull was actually called the battle hull in a lot of ways. And the battle bridge is at the top of the goose egg underneath.
Yeah.
When the saucer comes off, the battle bridge is there. It's not in the middle of the saucer where it's like you're not going to get damaged. It's meant to be the command bridge when they separate. So they go, okay, well, if we got families, they all pile into the saucer and the other thing fights and it zooms away. So they were doing all this stuff to say 100 years have gone by. And oh, by the way, that's how you'll differentiate this show from the last one.
Yeah.
So all of that
That
stuff
makes
was
sense.
all just layers and layers and layers of but not just to be, instead of having blue and green, we'll paint this pink and purple. It's like, no, not surface stuff. It'll be down deep. And the carpet on the walls and the counselor on the bridge, aside from being an overdue reform, was supposed to be differentiation. But it was also, all that was supposed to say, look, it's a comfortable thing. We're going to explore. It'll be dangerous, but it's not like wartime. Which that came back to trip them a few times, and people go, "Oh, what are we doing? Where are the families? Where are the kids? You're going to the."
And even you look at the horseshoe on the bridge, right? Because in the original bridge, the captain's chair is alone and elevated, and now he has this sort of like almost like committee in the middle, which is collaborative and.
You read those first think tank. So when it was just David, Gerald, and not even Dorothy Fontana, it was Gene. And David Gerald and Bob Justman and Eddie Milkus, who wasn't there full time, and then Susan Sackett sitting in for Gene at times, and Richard Arnold when he could stick his head in. But you had they'd go to lunch and toss out ideas and what are we going to make different and what can we do? And they would go down these things and we should have one of the crewmen should be disabled. That's where Jordy, came from, and all of this stuff. And they were originally gonna have it be the Enterprise, but have it be 100 years later. And they were originally going to number them instead of letters. So it was going to be the Enterprise 7 or 9 or something crazy -7. And unbeknownst to them, and this is another weird I ask when I was interviewing him, and it was the last camera interview he did for the Con of Wrath, my documentary, which is going to happen, I can finally say. Yay. But Harv Bennett told me, yay! Harv Bennett said, I asked him, I said, when you all were doing the last couple of movies, or he did 5 and then he wasn't there for 6, but when you did 5 and The Next Generation was up and going, they were in their 2nd season. I said, did you guys mix back and forth or anything? Now he was on 4. But even in 86, they had pretty much finished and were about to, and were showing the screenings when the next gen things were barely setting up at the end of 86, like the first few little offices. But they had heard, they weren't like connected at the hip or anything, but they had heard, and through Gene's office, they could communicate back and forth. But they'd heard that they wind up with the new Enterprise at the end of 4, and it's the Enterprise A. So the next gen people said, oh, well, I guess we shouldn't use a number. We should do that too. What should we think? Should it be the Enterprise J or and they finally said, no, let's have it be. They did some math and, talked to Mike and Rick and Andy Probert and said, let's have it be the Enterprise D. But, at the beginning, it would have been a number. But that's one of the rare times they kind of talked to each other in that moment. But it had already been filmed and done. So they were kind of stuck with it by the time they, by just a couple of months they had. But anyway, it was just a very weird time. But those early people, after a few months of think tanking all this stuff and coming up with these characters and what are we going to do, and the holodecks emerged then because he'd wanted to do holodecks in the 60s and they didn't have the budget. And then they have him in the rec deck is in the animated series, but he talks about wanting them, and then and the world knew about it because Stephen Poe had put it in the making of. And said, no, there's holographic cubicles to fight homesickness. That was the whole point of holographic things, was you would be homesick for your home world, and you could go in and act like you were at your, or training. And they didn't say we're going to do complete telenovels and people could have holoddiction.
Right.
All of that, it would be a therapy thing. Anyway, and that
Do
and
we
the
feel like
counselor
that
on the, you know,
those brain trust folks, do we feel like they were I mean, I guess, these are all unknowns in show business, but do we feel like they were in this with the intention that they were going to be with this show on the long term? Because they each fell off so quickly
oh well,
once
we
the show
we
ended.
knew who they were. We knew David Gerald, and we
Sure.
knew Dorothy, and we knew Bob Justman, and Eddie. You know, Eddie Milkus, and Eddie Milkus like I said, executive produced Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, and um, Mork and Mindy,
Mhm.
and he didn't need all this grief. He was set for life, but he did, and then he got out of it when he saw it was off and launching, and Rick came in. So that was when kind of you started having the schism because they had to hire up a staff. New people came in the middle of all of it. Leonard Macias was making sure that nobody usurped Gene, like nobody, because he was worried about Gene's health and facilities, not failing, but just being a little off, so that some hotshot came in and took things over.
And really just alienated his inner circle.
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
and to the point where
Tragically.
he was snooping in offices, and they finally took a case against him to the Writers Guild, and he was banned from the Hart Building, and then banned from the lot, or at least banned from the Hart Building. But he was like going into offices, and he was sending memos in other people's names. Like he would send things across to Rick, and they weren't in the Hart Building in the Cooper. They didn't have their final off. They were still in trailers, but they were anyway. It's crazy that
It
documentary,
is.
Chaos on the Bridge, and there were two
Yeah.
levels. The first season, the chaos was, and the startup was Leonard Majlish's, and then the
Mhm.
second year was Maury Hurley fighting the way to being showrunner by the end of the first season, and then starting off in a good place. And they did have the strike at the end of
Writer's
the
strike.
season,
Yeah.
but even by halfway through the season, Gene was fighting people on different things, and he was being a little Pollyanna about, and some really good ideas didn't get done because he was like, "No, my captain is purer than that," or something. And people are like, "Come on, Gene, we gotta." Because also, Guru Gene had happened by this time, talking to
Right.
colleges. Gene the philosopher, Gene the futurist, Gene the guru, and the whole thing about our humans and our Federation people don't argue. They don't have personal differences. And they're like, what? So you have the writers coming in going, what?
Right.
What? How
Yeah.
do we have conflict how do you have dramatic conflict if you had to be us versus the external thing? And that's why they would have these endless, people would come in and pitch stories, and only a fraction of them would get looked at, and they would be creaky. And they didn't do a writer's room the way we do now. Everything was like by memo, which means people are like dictating or hand typing stuff out and making
Gosh.
copies. And it just kills me. And it's before, in the 60s, there were only like one or two writers, and everything was freelance. So that's kind of the way you worked. But if you were going to have a room of 4 or 5 people, and people sit in their offices, and the memos just fly back and forth. So and Herb Wright was in the first season, and he came
Mhm.
back later, a little later. You have those in the archives, and we occasionally have gotten some of them out for the Trek Files. We'll do more of shows that we know about, and the shows that didn't get produced. And there's a very famous one that was finally the reason why David Gerrold left, his Blood and Fire, which was going to be the AIDS
Yeah.
allegory at the time.
Right.
He sells it
And
at conventions. You can buy the script.
yeah.
Right.
Well, and
Yeah.
I mean, if you pulled the file together, it would be, because it got about halfway through, it got rewritten when he was taken off of it, and they totally de-emphasized the AIDS allegory and just made it a horror thing about these worms, blood-sucking space worms, and how do you deal with them. It went horror, and then they stayed with that for a long time, and then somebody at one point said, this needs to go back to what David had at the beginning. It's totally lost its focus. And they pulled it, and then they never did it. And then the
And they
gay
never did.
community, as it existed in 86 and 87, was pissed because they had made, yes, we're going to have a gay character, or at least gay guest star. It was a big thing. And then
Yeah.
Gene backtracked a little bit because I think some of the realities of what he was promising, and how much are we going to push here and there, and what am I up to fighting over? And it's like, he's like, look, we don't have to have two people walk in that said has gay blinking on their uniforms. We just see two people over in the back corner holding two people of the same sex holding hands in the back.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
And they're
it's
like, it
interesting
can
because
be,
I just listened to you cover this with George Takei on your podcast.
Yes.
And it was a very interesting, Gene talking about living to fight another day, and the sort of the things that you have to sort of let go of if you want to be a
That's the
commercially
phrase.
successful entity, you know.
Yeah.
And
As
even the
maddening
times.
as it is, George's phrase, yeah, that live to fight another day, pick your battle and pick one now, and now in a month or two, pick another one, and and push and push and push and push. I mean, that's how they finally got Andorians on Enterprise after 15 years of because
Really?
that monocolored aliens look stupid in 60s and original series, and nobody believed that now. And yeah, we got
Andorians are the
Andorians, and then we got
best.
They were
Orions
great.
right
I love
after.
Andorians.
Right.
And of course, now they're like the googiest thing ever. No matter what era you're in, you love,
Yeah.
paint. Sure,
Yeah.
paint Susie Plaxton as paint Jeff Combs as a whatever.
Yes.
It's like, yes, why didn't you do this then it turns into, oh, why didn't we do this 5 years ago? Yeah. It's one of those things. But
Well,
it was such a cauldron of all this stuff. It's hard enough, it's hard enough. As I said, like, can you catch the back of the companion? Whoever wrote the copy for that said, can you catch lightning in a bottle twice? And that was the whole thing because, and Rick Berman would say this, the idea of it's a sci-fi show, it's a sequel to a sci-fi show, and then it's going to be on syndication as a sequel sci-fi show. And like the deck was stacked against them, and they started off creaky, but people were hungry for Star Trek then. Well, not the old loud 10%, not the fan fiction women who had been with Spock for 20 years, but everybody else was so hungry for this. They like looked past some of the creakiness, and some of the stuff was very cool, and the effects were still on a budget, but they found the way using tape to composite. They found a way to get quasi movie level effects. Bob's library idea would not work for the 80s anymore, and that's Rob Legato and then Dan Curry, and they wound up with two teams working, and they found a way to do it, and they found a way to have some big shows and then some little shows and have a budget, and then eventually they got to be digital edited, and then CGI didn't come in till late DS9 and mid Voyager.
Yeah,
But,
Voyager, yeah.
But they did find a way to step up that where it didn't look creaky 60s still. It had to be at least better than the 80s. And I remember watching yesterday's Enterprise in the third season. I mean, Next Generation, what is a standoff? A space battle was this. We're staring at you, and we're staring at you. Nobody's going to move unless it's a sweeps month or it's the finale or the premiere.
Yes. Yes.
So all that stuff they had to contend with and figure it out and get it along. But yeah, these things that over the years, it was sad because we'd have you said your question got in. And I remember this kind of blew my mind up. At one point, somebody said, why are there no Hispanic regulars? And I was like, no, wait a minute. And went, oh. And then it was like, well, this is very sad because
about South Asians on Star Trek.
Yes. But here's the thing. So look, in Next Generation, Macha Hernandez was supposed to be Macha Hernandez because of casting. Winds up being she's white Russian, because of who they were casting. Okay, sure. In DS9, the Doctor was supposed to be Julian Amoros, who was going to be South American, Chilean, or Argentinian. Winds up being Arabic is still a nice bit of diversity, but was supposed to be in. There's one for Voyager too. Who was it supposed to be? Anyway, it's like and then you go back and go, wait a minute. His original pitch, and now it's been answered in Strange New Worlds. The original navigator helmsman on in the Cage was going to be Jose Ortegas. Who becomes Jose Tyler, who is just as white as they come, blonde, because he's Dan Durier's son. Established actor, young guy. They hire him. Well, bye Ortegas. So that's kind of cool that they brought that name back.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
very cool.
But Jose Tyler was originally Jose Ortegas. It's like, how many times does the Hispanic character get wiped out in casting? Not because somebody at some point goes, wait a minute, we don't want a Hispanic character. That doesn't, it's just they get into the crunch of casting and pulling people in.
You like who you like, and
yeah. And that's one thing that's really revolutionized. But I'm sitting here going to scream because I'll think of, and I'm sorry, Belana Torres, her father was Hispanic. Does that count? No, I don't think so. She's Klingon.
Yeah.
She's half Klingon when the story needs it to be half, but otherwise,
yes,
she's Klingon. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we could go on forever, but there's a list of questions that we ask all of our guests.
Uh-oh.
And I feel like
This is
your
hazing, by the way. Yes.
answers
This is
won't
the
be
fun
short.
part.
So, so I want to get into this before we lose you. Okay. Okay. First up, when did you find Star Trek? What was your Star Trek meet cute?
My ninth grade science teacher was shocked that I did not know Star Trek and it was reruns after school, and she shamed me into going home that day and starting to watch Star Trek.
It's amazing.
I love that.
And
Fun.
I watched.
love teachers.
I knew there was a Saturday morning cartoon, so this made some sense to me at the time. I said, I'm going to watch the Saturday morning cartoon, and if I like that, then I'll watch after school the live action. That makes no sense at all.
That was actually my same gateway.
That was my. So I watched one or two, and I went, oh, okay. And by that time, I cannot remember my first episode, but
Yeah.
Like, wait, but that's so
Amazing.
wild to me. She's like, "You're a nerd. Why aren't you watching this?" Like, is that how you took it? Like,
you don't want to hear the whole
like, how do
story.
you-
The whole story was two other. She was a first year teacher. She was all excited about things. This was like in the spring, so we'd been together. There were two girls talking to her. I walked by her desk. They weren't pets. Everybody liked her. And I walked by, and they were kind of giggling and goofing around, and she had a blue Sharpie or a blue pen, and they'd all put blue dots on their foreheads. And I walked by, and I go, what are you all? Back then, I said, what are you all, the blue dot cleanser man from whatever that brand was? And they're like, and she said, no, Larry, we're Hawkins. And I go, what? She goes, no, we're Hawkins. And I go, what? And she goes, we're Hawkins, like on Mirror Mirror. And I'm like, what? And she said, I'll never forget this. She goes, oh, Larry, don't tell me you don't know Star Trek. And I'm like, that's the space show with the guy with the ears, right? And she was like, go home today and start watching this. 4 o'clock, Channel 5.
That is amazing.
She created
I
a
love
monster.
Oh, Larry.
Well, we'd been through, like, it was like the 7th or 8th, it was spring.
Yeah.
No, but I love that. I love the fact that, like, but that's the chance encounter. If you had never, like, think about, like, anyway, go ahead, Mike Jones. Sorry.
Maybe I would
moment.
have, come to it eventually, but that's it.
Next question.
That was pretty easy. Okay.
I know.
But wait,
If you
there's
could
more.
have dinner, you could have dinner with 3 characters, the characters, not the actors. Who would they be and why?
Oh, well, my old answer was always McCoy.
Mm-hmm. Who you embodied wonderfully in the fan film.
Oh, thank you. You're being very kind. That was a little bit under, not duress, but I was working on stellar cartography all night while I was doing that in the day.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Wow. Of all the characters, because the other person I would love to have across space and time, I'd love to have dinner with Gene Coon, but that's not going to happen.
Mm.
The brow is so furrowed.
I love the care.
You guys, I'm not big on listicles, and I'm not big on these top 5. I hate. You do what you want to do, rest of world. I'm a definite minority on this one, but I hate those.
But that's the thing. It's a dinner. It's not your top favorite characters.
No. I know. Just to have for dinner. Just to have for dinner. This is different than saying favorite series, favorite episode, favorite this,
Mm-hmm.
and you do this for everybody.
Sweet's good.
But separating it from the actors, and there's so many recurring guest actors too.
We've literally broken him.
You have. I said these listicle things. Okay, just say something, Larry. Part of what's hard is so many of the actors I know, or at least know kind of ish, or at least watch them in their everyday life and watch their Instagram fly by and everything.
It's hard to separate.
There's lots of creatives that I would have this on the list, but the actors, who cares about them? No, the characters, and all the shippers are dropping their teeth now when I say that. Characters. Okay. Tom Paris.
Okay.
You guys, I'm hurting as I say this because it could literally be like I would just I would spin a wheel here almost. But I'm trying to think at least by series ish. What'd you say, 5 or 3 or what?
No, just
3.
Oh, 3. Okay.
You're mostly there.
I'm mostly there.
Right.
On. He's running down. He's to the 40. He's to the 50. He's to the 30. He skipped the 40. It feels like something on DS9. Come on, who's a recurring on DS9 that
I feel like 90% of all Niners, if you were to say, name your favorite dinner guest who's a recurring on Deep Space Nine, they're going to say Garrick.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Don't you think that is like what everyone is going to say?
But DS9 also has like
specifically a
47 different, recurring characters.
Oh my God.
They do.
We might just
So
have to give you
painful.
Ducat.
I don't.
Odo.
Oh no.
Okay.
Odo.
And now if you ask me why, I'll say, I don't know. I'll change
No,
it.
there's no why.
No,
These are
we've
irrational
got a
answers.
constable. We've got a doctor. Because you said
See,
McCoy,
you're going
right?
analytical
McCoy.
here. So okay.
Absolutely. No, listen, some people go like they're like who they want to talk like good conversation. Like some people are like, oh, I want to talk to Worf about his life, and how would that conversation go with Jadzia and that type of thing. But I love that we broke you, and that
You did. I'm
That's
telling
by
you,
far the hardest question.
when you go down
is,
this
it is,
kind of
it
a
is.
path, when you go, Larry, what's your favorite this or your, unless it's
Oh,
like
no.
something that I think about, which is
would never say
90% of
favorite.
the time not. Yeah. Okay. Well then, good job. Okay.
Okay, Mike
don't
Jones,
remember-
come on.
What the problem is I never really grew out of the original series in fandom. Now,
And
what
so
I
you
mean
could
by
have
that
said all
is,
3 of them.
what I mean is you had 20 years to sit with the same thing over and
Yeah.
over, forever and ever and ever, and that's all you had to think about. 79 stupid little show and 6 movies and those characters and da-da-da. And then everything else was like, who cares more? And to me, it's like, oh, Next Gen, NDS9, and Voyager, and Enterprise. And then you breathed for a minute. And now all the new modern shows have zoomed along. And it's like, I haven't picked my favorites from the Berman era yet. Guys, what? I haven't, I'm like, because part of it is, it's not laziness. It's like you're processing stuff all the time. And,
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
but to just sit and have nothing else to think about except I'm going to go home after school. I'm going to watch this. And then I'm going to, after a few months, think about what I have questions about. And then I'm going to flesh out the tech manual and I'm going to redo Bijo's concordance and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it my way. And it's just going to be this. And then when they start like here, have some more. And they're dumping more at you. Like,
Right.
I'm supposed to process all this, and you have your favorites, and you have things rise to the top and things fall to the bottom, but it's not like this pinpoint accuracy thing. So
Yeah.
Right.
that's
No,
all
I
fun.
totally understand that. In fact, I'll tell a side story. I had, as a kid, one of the many books that I had was the Star Trek Starfleet Technical Manual by Franz Joseph, I think.
Yeah.
And I wore it out. The spine fell apart. So what I ended up doing was hole punching them and putting them in the order I thought the book should have been in. Oh, yes.
Oh.
There it is.
Wait. Did you? Wow.
You got it right.
Oh my
It's
God.
hole punched in a binder.
Because when you started painting models and you wanted that color key,
yes.
you didn't want to get paint or you didn't want to get ink or something on your pages. So you did that where you could take it out, you could fold flat. And no, listen, I pulled the gum pages apart. In fact, you want how much of a nerd I was? I was at my freshman orientation for college, and instead of going out and finding a party to go to, I sat in my little dorm room. I don't even know if I had a roommate for the weekend or whatever. But I sat like Friday night or Saturday night instead of going out and finding a party. Because I didn't know anybody. I didn't have anybody to go with. I was totally a stranger. I sat and pulled my tech manual apart for this binder.
That's amazing.
Mike's
Yes.
nerddom has just been
I
so
love-
validated by
I
us.
love that. So validated.
But
oh my gosh.
here's my Bijo concordance.
Oh my
With here,
God.
hold on. I can
Worn
slide
out.
there. I'll slide all the
Worn
sections.
out.
Wow.
Oh,
That's love.
That is well
That
loved.
was star charts through 3 generations of trying to make something happen. Yeah.
Okay,
And
Mike
notes.
Jones, throw it out there.
Okay.
No,
Okay,
come on.
sorry.
No, you're good. We love
If you
Birdwatch.
lived in the 23rd or 21st century, what would your life be like? Would you join Starfleet? Would you stay on Earth? Would you be a Orion slave trader.
I think I could do without the slave trading, which apparently had died out by
Yeah.
the 2250.
We're told.
Well, that's so funny. Since almost every field, like if Marla MacGyver's can be a historian, and if Whalen, in The Big Goodbye, Whalen, they have a literature historian as part of the Enterprise crew.
Never know when you
Larry
need one.
Nemecek, we know what he's doing.
never know.
He's a historian. He's found his job.
I'm gonna say, well, but now in the 24th century, on one hand, has carpet on the walls,
Yeah.
technology unchained with families, but at the same time, they're going further, and they're the ones that hit the Borg, and everything else. So I wouldn't stay. No, I couldn't stay on Earth by then.
Yeah.
Earth would have been too old and pat and whatever.
Okay.
I don't know if I
He's
would
in the
go to the
stars.
far frontier. So I would maybe. You don't have to think about Starfleet would have a pension because they have no money. So
Right. Right.
you're not even thinking in those terms.
The economics of the future are back.
I know I would not be on Earth. I know I would be at least I'd be on the moon. I mean, or something, or Mars.
He'd be in the stars. He'd be in the stars.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
What's your go-to holodeck program?
Oh my God. It would probably be something from history.
Okay.
Now you're talking to me sitting here in 2025 if I had technology from the 2260s or whatever.
Flex hypothetical, but yes.
Yeah. If I could jump up from right now, zoom ahead 200 or 300 years, what would I say? Hey, I want to do this. I would do. Wow. I would want to do. Oh, this will probably sound so lame, though.
No, don't self.
No,
I
not
would
at
just
all.
want to. I would just want to visit. I think I would just want to visit places at different times in history.
That's not lame at all. I would do
This
same
is what
thing.
you get for asking me these things with
Right?
no warning.
No,
These
exactly.
boring
This
answers.
is the best
No, like
part.
the famous places I grew up. I would like to see them, like, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago.
That's awesome.
Not shiny, whatever. I mean, there's moments in history let's go back and redo that, but
Right.
I don't know.
Watch the first production of Hamlet ever in the Globe. You can,
or something. Well, when you go down that path, there's a whole slew of things you could say.
Right.
I want to be there. It's almost like I don't know. This is funny. It's almost like what's the show they did on Saturday morning? Walter Cronkite did it in D. Not See It Now. That was You Are There. Remember? It's
okay. Yeah.
It's December 12th. It's December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, and you are there. And they would, it would be something. Although I'm not talking about I want to see Pearl Harbor again, be there. I'm just saying that was a show they did, and
yeah.
But he's like, not me. I don't want to go. I'm just
no.
saying.
I don't know that I have the stomach to. Now, if I've got the holodeck safeties on.
Right.
Well, those never work. We know that.
Yeah, those never work.
You better check. You better have a safety on the safety.
That is correct.
Redundancies. I think that's what I would do. I think I would just want like the world's biggest historical reference database thing for tiny little particular things, and just
That's awesome. That's the first time we've ever had that answer.
I think.
I think like a time machine. Okay, we call this rapid fire, but no pressure.
It made it worse. No, I'm kidding.
Right. Crusher or Pulaski?
What are we like?
You're
favorite character?
You're picking Crusher or Pulaski.
Like who's your
Crusher?
Doctor?
I don't dislike Pulaski, but it's like I don't know
either.
Okay, fine. Rapid fire. Rapid fire.
I mean, I guess
we love both.
Rapid fire.
I think it's hysterical how the whole Pulaski comeback has happened. I'm all for it.
Yes.
I bet you're asking me.
Are you doing Klingon Tai Chi with Worf or yoga with Beverly Indiana in a leotard?
There's no third. Okay.
There's no third.
You know, I- they're both goofy. I'll say Tai Chi with Worf.
Great.
Just because it'd be better for me than
Yes.
yoga. Than...
Do you prefer tea, Earl Grey, hot, or coffee, black?
Oh, since I don't do hot drinks,
Oh,
um,
Oh,
I prefer
fascinating.
iced coffee, but not
I
black.
can't. I don't. There's something weird with my. I can't. I have to let everything cool. I cannot endure a hot drink.
I understand that.
I have
that is
lukewarm
an
chocolate.
excellent answer to that.
That's
Actually,
an excellent
As an-
answer. Neither.
So then it's
I'm-
about flavor, and
Mhm.
so tea or coffee,
or
Ractigino.
Ractigino.
Yeah, that's. Oh,
or
I always
Ractigino.
forget.
Yeah,
the
don't
third
they have
one.
ice Ractiginos?
Yes, you
Oh,
can have
ice
that.
Ractigino. Yes,
Okay, I'll do
that
an
sounds
ice
amazing.
Ractigino. Okay.
Brilliant.
Okay,
No whip.
this is not related to the last question. No whip. If you had a replicator sitting next to you right now in your desk, what would you make?
My mom's red velvet cake.
Yes.
Ooh, cream cheese icing?
I love red velvet cake.
It's not. No, it's the original that now I found out has a special name. No, it's cooked flour and sugar, and it's cooked and yeah. It's
I
nothing
feel
like
my
the
grandmother
fad
made that
trendy.
kind of frosting that you're talking about. That's
Right.
The
not cream
fad
cheese, it's
trendy
like the-
comeback of the last 20 years is not what I
Yeah.
grew up with. That my cousins all beat up my mom if she didn't make 2 of them for every family get together. So yeah.
Do you
What
have
they do
her
now is they
recipe?
make a chocolate cake
Oh, yeah,
with red
yeah,
food
yeah.
coloring. That is not real red velvet cake.
What? Say what?
Now they do chocolate cake with red.
Oh,
food
that's
coloring.
stupid.
That
No,
is
that's
not real.
that's
red
like a
velvet
devil's food cake. That's what that is.
Right.
No,
My
it's-
question was, do you have her recipe?
Oh yes, I have her.
Good.
Yes.
Well, Larry, you need to share it because I need to make
Okay.
this original
Well-
version from Oklahoma.
We'll be
Yeah.
over tomorrow.
It's so funny because it's almost like whenever anybody sees something Star Trek out in the real world who's not a fan but they know you are, and they send you a picture or they send
Oh.
you a story.
Yeah.
all
And
the
you're like,
time.
yeah, yeah, that's like 3 years old or something. But
Oh,
thank you.
yeah.
You don't want
My
to. You don't want to
worst-
discourage them. You
My
know.
mom sends me posters that say "May the Force be with you," and I'm just like,
Oh.
oh, thank you, Mom. Love you.
So it was like people have been. Oh, this is stupid. Why am I even trying? I have them scanned and put away, but nothing I can get too fast. I will send it to you. I'll send you a scan in her writing
Oh
that
yes.
I have of her her
Oh.
recipe card. Yeah.
I'm gonna make
That's
it. Just know,
very special.
Damazon will know that I will bring it.
Because
to
here's the
office.
thing: it's a whole bottle of red food color goes for the 2 layers.
Great.
Mm.
And then what you do is at holidays, at Christmas, she would make 2. She had to make 2 because we got tired of. She'd make one and then they would be gone at both families, and we'd have nothing. So it was like make one to keep here, and then one goes away. But when you make 2, you make one red, and then you make the other one exactly the same, except you do green food color, and you have a green. So then you have 2. Then you do red, green, and then the bright white icing. And
Oh.
on 4th of July, sometimes she would do a blue, and we'd have a red, white, and blue with the white, whatever. But
All right.
it was you better believe it was my groom's cake. She made it in a heart shape,
Yes.
but that was my groom's cake, and I got one piece because it was like it was it was gone by the time I went through the line. I got my one piece.
That's great. Yeah, our wedding cake was red velvet. I love it. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's
I'm sorry if
see.
it was a fake red velvet though, but it's okay. It's okay.
You know what? It's fine. It was still delicious.
Of course it was. Yeah, I'm being weird.
Okay. Who's making your drink? In terms of Star Trek bartenders, Quark or Guinan?
I think Quark.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He won't serve you root beer.
that's fine.
Okay. This one is controversial.
Root beer smells. Okay.
This one. Okay. I'm just gonna say it. Are you Team Tasha or Team Armus?
Wow. I'm Team Tasha.
Yeah, we got some.
who
There's some
says-
haters out there, Larry.
Who says Team Armas?
Hello, me. I do all day long.
Yeah, this is a point of contention. We fight this fight on the long term.
What are you thinking? The whole Tuvix thing has gotten old, so you're going to start something here?
No, listen, I
Well,
am
you
I
know,
am team destroy.
this is
Well,
something that we discovered in the fact that Mike and I being lifelong Trekkies and Lanita
Correct.
being an adult convert,
Hmm.
that Tasha Yar is a character that we perceived very differently depending on
Hmm.
when we encountered
Right.
her. Being two young gay boys in very
Right.
far apart places separately, found ourselves like identifying with this sort of female action hero. And
Right.
Lanita in
She was
the
great.
2010s, right?
Yeah.
Encountered Tasha Yar and was like, do better.
Like, this is a poorly written character. I mean, granted,
We all
she
know
was
it's
only
not her
there in the
fault.
first season.
Blah blah. Yeah, okay.
Right,
All the
right.
things.
I
Blah
know,
blah blah.
I know.
Not her fault. They wrote her. This is what I got to work with. Goodbye. Thank you. Moving on.
you sound like understanding people the first season when Will would get booed for Wesley.
Oh, because he was an annoying child.
Well, yeah, but it wasn't him. It was the
No,
I
it
know.
was character. Correct.
But he would
Denise
be
Crosby.
live at a con and people would
And
be rude to
that
him.
is
And
true.
I would
That's
read this.
awful.
I
And
wasn't
that's
there,
terrible.
but
That's
I'd hear
terrible.
it and think,
Yeah.
what are you idiots? What did you just walk in? I
Right.
thought you were fans that knew how this was made. It's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I would never be like Denise Crosby. You suck. No.
Oh, no.
Hello,
no,
come
Denise
talk.
Crosby.
No, it's
She's
just
great.
yeah, the character.
As a
Well,
10-year-old,
that's why she left. But yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
I hate to say this, as a 10-year-old, I had the button that I got at a con that said, shut up, Wesley, which now as an adult, I have a whole new appreciation of Wesley. And I kind of want to meet Will Wheaton if just to apologize.
Have him sign your
Just
shut
to
up Wesley
apologize.
button.
Yeah, exactly. Like, why does this kid get to be in space and I don't? I think that's kind of where it came from.
At the last
Yikes.
convention I went to, I got this sticker that says "Never shut up," and it's like the Wesley
Mhm.
pattern. Anyway,
Yes,
never
I
shut
also
up.
have that.
That's
It's
cool.
like,
That's
it's my
cool.
penance.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
Last question. This one's really
Okay.
specifically for you. So you've literally met every Star Trek heavy hitter, creative actor. Who were you starstruck by?
Hmm.
Okay, hold on. Well, Gene.
Obviously.
It was
Yeah,
just
I
a
don't know if
very
there's a better answer.
5-minute
Yeah.
thing.
I'm curious. Could you tell us that story real quick? Like you meeting Gene? You were young, you said.
So I had done my homemade concordances the first
how
couple of
old were you?
seasons. Oh, I was in my 20s.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, mid-late 20s. I had done my concordances. Next Generation was on the air a couple of seasons, and I had met Richard Arnold at a convention. Oh, well, no. I met him, invited him to come to ThunderCon because he would be amazing and cheap. And at the same time, I went through that, and it says, "Oh, and by the way, here's the concordance I'm doing, blah blah blah." And he wrote me back and said, "Oh my God, we have nothing like this. Our writers, all we have are just send their assistants to go look at the scripts on file because there was no memory alpha, there was no database, anything, there was no encyclopedia, no, there was nothing." And I was doing, and he's like, "Bijo's supposed to be working on this, and we're sending her the scripts." And I was like, "You're sending the scripts?" It's like, like what I could do if I just had the scripts, how much faster this would be. But he was like, "This is amazing. I'm going to make copies. Of course, you don't own this because it's blah, 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 but I'm going to make copies of this and all our writers will love this. And this is amazing." And he went on, and at the bottom, he's like, "Oh yeah, I'll come to your con." And then after that, I was like going to go visit somebody I knew in LA. And I had not come to California yet, really. This is the second trip. And I flew in and stayed near him. But then at one point I said, "Okay, Richard." And so I was going to get a set visit and a set, so he did me a drive on and I parked on the lot and met him and gave me a little bit of a tour and walked over the stages. They were shooting the bridge scenes for Who Watches the Watchers. And I'll never forget that. And Patrick came over and there were 3 in the little group. There was like a young guy in Patrick's theater for urban kids class and the station manager from the Milwaukee station that ran Next Generation. And me. And Patrick came over and talked to all 3 of us. And but when we were back in the Hart building, Richard said, "This is Larry Nemecek. He's from Oklahoma." And whoever he was, some assistant, and they were like, "Yeah, sure, sure." Fine. Somebody else, Richard's giving a tour to. And then Richard
Right.
said, "This is the guy that does the book is like the concordance." And they totally and were like, oh my God, you have saved my butt. You have saved my ass so many times.
Oh my
Oh
gosh.
my God. Like, I just thought this fell out of the sky on us. And it's, oh my God. And I was like, oh, okay. And Richard goes, do you want to meet Gene? Like, I'm going to say no. But the
Right.
thing is, they had used to, and this is before cameras and cell phones, right?
Mhm.
All the signs said, no cameras on the lot, no cameras on the lot. So didn't want to get yelled at. So I didn't know then what that meant was don't walk around on the lot with your camera hanging off like a, like a tourist.
Paparazzi. Yeah.
Yeah, put it in your bag, get where you're going, then get your camera out and do it. I didn't know that then. And so anyway, I met Gene. He thanked me for doing the thing they were doing. I said, "Well, my gosh, thank you for all the years." And we talked for like 2 or 3 minutes, and then we went out. No camera, no. It's only up here in my mind.
It was
No,
just for you. I always say
yeah,
that
it's
when
just
there's
for
not a
me.
camera, I was like, that was just for us. Like
Yes.
Just for you and Gene.
just for you and Gene.
Yeah.
That's
And I
That's
guess
really cool.
Richard's standing over there, and now he's gone.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I'm trying to. The first times, I don't. I want to say maybe D, but I don't. I was more like internally in shock to finally meet people more than the babbly
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of fan. I wasn't a blah blah blah, but internally I was like, okay, this is gonna happen. This is gonna happen. Okay.
Okay, it happened. Who do I tell? Who do I tell first? Call my wife. Call my wife.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's
I'll-
amazing.
I'll sit on that.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for having been so generous with your time.
Ooh, we went a little over. Okay.
No, there's
it's-
never no.
There's
we're,
no
we're,
over
we're-
for us. We
not
just
for us. We always are
we just want
respectful
to
of
keep
our
you prisoner all
guests
night.
because we'll keep talking. Like
This
we
is
always say,
not
check
an
the
episode
times.
of the Trek Files.
John giving me the wrap it up. Oh, we're talking to
don't-
Gene Coon's ghost. I don't care. Wrap it up.
Well, if you can book him for us, I mean, we would be grateful for him.
Get in
Oh my
line.
Yeah, right.
Well, normally I say, where can people find you? But I think everybody knows where they can find you. But still, your LarryNemecek.com.
Is a good. It needs updating, but yeah. So the Trek Files, everywhere. Tuesdays live, Trekland Tuesdays live is my live show. My YouTube channel. I didn't do a YouTube channel to promote it, so everybody please go like and subscribe and do that. But I do Second Opinion when there's fresh Trek. Second Opinion with Dr. Trek, and my cadet Alice with my granddaughter Alice watches with Dr. Trek Watch Prodigy is all there. And I just did a thing on Star Trek Day. Went to the screening in LA, and it was in Culver City, and I went over by the stages in the old 40 acres lot and stood on now it's industrial warehouses, but the lot where the location stuff was from Mayberry and all of that they used on Star Trek.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Anyway, so my YouTube channel. But yeah, Portal 47 is the backstage package with guests and people that you never hear from, that all the eras and all the creatives of all the fields. And our community and roundtable and stuff from my archives is Portal 47 and the Trek tours that we do, day tours. And the return of the Geek Nation Tours big multi-day tour with my friend Terrace is coming the week before Vegas next year. So we haven't done it in 10 years between the pandemic and everything. So check out, again, my site may not all be fully updated, but geeknationtours.com for that. It's a big tour the week before, and it winds up at the Vegas convention.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, Mike Jones, hold on. Check timestamp. It popped into my head. Single question, and then
She always prolongs the podcast.
She
when
always,
we're
I
about
always
to-
try to wrap
Okay.
up. and
This
she
is
has-
part
This
of the
isn't me.
format.
This is on you.
No, it's always me. Oh, it's always me. I was just sitting here thinking, like, is this where you saw yourself? Like, when you were in ninth grade and it was like, go watch Star Trek, did you ever think that this would be where you...
In ninth grade, another class, in a careers class, we had to write a paper about what we would do when we grew up.
Yeah.
I had no idea. Now, within a few years, I started narrowing communications, kind of like journalism, theater, acting, backstage, whatever, kind of went that way. I wrote my paper in the ninth grade about owning a hobby store, like with
Oh.
model kits and trains and stamp collecting, because I did all that. Some model rockets. I had no, I had no clue what I wanted to do when I was. So did I answer your question? I don't think I did.
Yeah.
No, you
Okay.
did. Like
Okay.
I just think that it's fascinating
Oh,
how a chance encounter, like it's the, a butterfly flaps its wings in Brazil and next thing you know there's a hurricane in Fiji. That type of thing that
yeah.
literally, because you sang your meet cute of literally walking by a teacher who's talking to two young girls and you just happen to look, what is this about? And for her to be like, why don't you know about it? And for you to receive that and then like put you on this path where you could have, I don't know, been going somewhere else. It just, things like that are
Well,
just fascinating to
I
me.
was at 18. It's like you have to pick where you're going to school and what your major is, and that's what you will live with your entire life.
Your
I mean,
life.
that's literally
It's
It
crazy
still
where I
how that
happens.
was.
is, kids.
Yeah.
I was, and the idea, I think, well, I think I'll go into radio TV ish, but I'm thinking like radio TV means TV news or
Yeah.
work at the local
Yeah.
station TV. It didn't
Okay.
mean anything else. Now I got out here, it was like, oh, well, if 10 years, if I'd come out here and got hooked up as the protege of a mentor somewhere in something, who
Yeah.
knows? But yeah, it's gone the way yeah, there were many times I got out of grad school, decided I'm not going to teach theater or journalism after all because I saw the zombie PhD guys walking around. I'm not going to do that. I'll get my master's and go, but it's theater. I'm not going to be a starving art actor, so that's silly. So I will work in news or maybe apply to our congressman's staff. And the editor wrote me back first, and I wound up being in print news until I feel like I used that up and banged my head on the ceiling. And thankfully, this other thing happened.
Wow.
It's amazing.
From a hobby to a hobby that took off to something. So
Well, it's almost
Right.
as unlikely a story as Star Trek Next Generation.
yeah,
Kismet.
yeah,
All right. I think that's a good note to wrap up on.
it did a lot better than Bonanza: The Next Generation,
Yeah.
which was that same time. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
We go look that up when we get up.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you, Larry, for being generous with your time and joining us today. This has been amazing and really just a highlight for us.
Oh,
I'd like to thank Damien and Lenita, as always, for being such wonderful co-hosts. And thank you, listener, for downloading us. Make sure you give us a 5-star review, like and subscribe. We are Hailing Freak Open on all the socials and hailingfrequenciesopen.com. And with that, I will say, Hailing Frequencies closed.
Trek well, everybody.
No goodbyes. Just good memories. Hailing frequencies closed, sir.
See, after our Tasha and Armis conversation,
I was
I
going
know.
to say.
Mike wanted
Yeah.
to cut that part from the pod, and Lenita and I would
did.
not let him.
No.
It's too important to us.
It has to stay.
I was like,
Gotta listen to it every time.
Episode